It's Tim Kaine doing his interview this week with Martha, I guess, Reeves, this week with George Stephanopoulos.
Bringing the Democratic vice presidential nominee, Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia. Senator Kaine, the FBI released more documents about the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails and a summary of her interview with the FBI. Let me just highlight what is new. She didn't seem to know what some classification marks even meant. She said she relied on staff to tell her what was classified. Archived emails were deleted even after a congressional committee requested them. And all she has really said about this is that it was a mistake to use a personal server. Don't the American people deserve a better explanation?
Well, and I think, Martha, they've gotten a better explanation, because to add to what you just said, the reason these materials are being made public is that Hillary Clinton said, I want the public to see them. When Congress asked the FBI, give us your notes, Hillary said, yeah, that's great, give them your notes, but let the American public see it. And what these notes demonstrate is in very significant detail why the FBI chose not to go forward with any additional proceeding. She did make a mistake, and she made it by deciding she wanted to use one device rather than multiple devices. She's apologized for that. She said it was a mistake, and she's learned from it. But these notes, which Hillary urged be made public, demonstrate clearly why the FBI saw no need for additional criminal proceedings.
But Senator Kaine,
contrast that on the other side. I'm saying just contrast the disclosure with a Donald Trump who won't even allow the American public to see his tax returns.
Let's go back to Hillary Clinton.
Okay, as usual, they always deflect over to the other side, and Tim Kaine is no different. But that being said, Hillary Clinton's full of shit. If she doesn't know what a classified marking looks like, those other Blackberries that she had get destroyed, and that's after they were requested. So, you know, all is not right in Gotham as far as she's concerned. Both of these guys are trying to pull fast ones on everybody, and you know, we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place because they both suck.
Is an issue that Americans care about. A majority of Americans do not trust her, largely because of this email issue. 66% do not trust her in the latest Fox News poll, and our ABC Washington Post poll shows a majority, 55%, disapproved of the FBI's decision not to indict her. So again, isn't this an issue that she needs to better explain?
That's why she asked that these materials be made public. And I think when you read the materials and read the article,
making the materials public and explaining them, Mr. Kaine, are two different things.
About the materials, they go into significant detail about why the FBI concluded that there was no need for any additional proceedings. And again, I just contrast that with Donald Trump.
But Senator Kaine, she hasn't answered questions about this. Shouldn't she be answering questions about this?
Martha, I just have to disagree with you. I have sat with her while she has answered questions. While she's answered questions about what she did and why, and then she said, look, by using one device, I made a mistake. I apologize for it. I've learned something and I wouldn't do it again. And I want all the facts to come out. I'll talk to congressional committees. We'll provide the material. FBI release these materials to the public. But on the other hand, we've got a candidate in Donald Trump who won't release his tax returns to the public after he promised to do so. And talk about national security. He has openly encouraged Russia to engage in cyber hacking to try to find more emails or materials. And we know that this cyber attack on the DNC was likely done by Russia. A president was impeached and had to resign over an attack on the DNC during a presidential election in 1972. This is serious business. So contrast the Hillary situation, where the FBI said there's no need for legal proceedings, with an attack that is being encouraged by Donald Trump on the DNC by Russia, similar to what led to the resignation of a president 30 years ago.
Okay, Senator Kaine, I want to ask you one specific question about Hillary Clinton's emails. Let me go through a few specifics. From the very beginning of this, Secretary Clinton consistently said she never sent or received any material marked classified. We learned earlier this summer that is not true. But we did learn this week from her interview with the FBI, she couldn't even identify the C classification in an email and consistently could not identify classified information in emails the FBI showed her. How could she make such definitive statements if she couldn't even recognize classified material?
Well, remember, my recollection of the Jim Comey testimony before Congress was that there were emails that contained classified information that had been improperly marked. So when she received the email, the material that was classified, which is supposed to be flagged and identified as classified, in many instances was improperly labeled. Now, I'm on two committees in the Senate, the Armed Services and Foreign Relations committees, where we do look at classified material. But we look at so much material, unless it is specifically pulled out and identified, it is difficult to know sometimes whether a statement or a paragraph is classified or not. And that's what she was saying. Unless it is identified in the way that it should be, it is difficult to know whether particular material is classified or not.
Okay,
Right?
I don't know about you, but if you're trained in classified documents and they tell you anytime you see a little C, that particular section is classified, I mean, how much training does it take to be able to recognize a little C next to a paragraph? So that, in my opinion, that explanation doesn't wash. And he can try to whitewash it all he wants, but she did receive classified documents on her email. Now, whether she sent them out or not, that I don't know. But we know, damn sure know that she did receive documents that were marked, at least in part, within the bodies as being classified. So if she didn't read the entire email, she could have missed those then. But short of that, nah, something is wrong.
Even after decades in government. I do want to move on to foreign policy. You're giving a major foreign policy speech this week, emphasizing U.S. relationships with Russia. I was just over in that region with U.S. pilots where the tension really is escalating. Hillary Clinton was in charge of the so-called reset with Russia. Can you make an argument that the reset worked, given what's happened in Crimea, given what's happened in Syria?
Look, I don't think you can make an argument that the relationship with Russia is in a good place right now. But that's not the U.S.'s fault. That's Vladimir Putin's aggressive and imperialist ambitions. Here is a guy who violated international law at the end of the Bush administration by moving into the Ossetia region of Georgia. And then he's violated international law by annexing the Crimean portion of the Ukraine and destabilizing the eastern Ukraine. Donald Trump was not even aware that Putin had gone into Crimea as recently as 2 weeks ago. He promised that Putin would not, and had to be reminded that Putin went in and took over Crimea 2 years ago. And this is just one of a number of very, very troubling instances where Trump's coziness with Putin, his coziness with Russia. Look, he's already had the Let Go One campaign chairperson.
Let's go back to the reset. I want to go back to the reset, Senator Kaine.
To pro-Russian elements in Ukraine and Russia.
I want to talk about Secretary Clinton again. Poland's former Minister of Foreign Affairs told Time magazine the Russians interpreted the reset as a kind of American weakness. It suggested that NATO is not as strong of an alliance as it was, and that gave Russia an opportunity to act. They're talking about Secretary Clinton there. Look, I don't believe in a blame America first strategy. Russia went into Georgia, the South Ossetia region of Georgia, when President Bush was in office, before President Obama was elected. And he went into Crimea during the Obama administration, but to try to say that's the U.S.'s fault is ridiculous. The guy is a dictator who represses journalists. And there's another tie. Donald Trump is banning journalists from outlets he doesn't like from covering him on a campaign. He's taken some lessons from Putin and others. But to say that Putin's imperial ambitions are the fault of anybody in the United States is ridiculous. Okay, let's talk about relationships with the press, and you talk about Donald Trump. Secretary Clinton has not held a press conference in 274 days. You argue that she's talked to the press on the campaign trail, but our campaign reporters and others say she doesn't really answer that many questions. Is this going to change?
Martha, she's had hundreds of interviews in the last year, and I got to push back on the notion that she hasn't done a press conference. She gave a speech to the National Association of Black Journalists within the last month, where there were also journalists, Hispanic journalists there, and she did a press conference there. And members of mainstream media outlets, television networks, asked her questions during that press conference. We're about to switch into a phase of the campaign where we will be on planes and the press will be on the planes with us, which is something that Donald Trump does not allow. We are not banning press outlets from covering public events. And so, look, all the time as Hillary's out on the trail, she's talking to the press, hundreds of interviews. I'm doing the same. The Labor Day to Election Day stretch, it's going to ramp up even more. But we are not a campaign that is acting like Putin and other dictators and banning press outlets from even attending public events. That's un-American, but that's what Donald Trump is doing.
So we can expect a press conference, yes or no?
There's been one in the last month, and you're going to see Hillary very, very accessible to the press, as I will be between now and November 8th.
Okay, thanks very much for joining us this morning, Senator Kaine.
You bet, Martha.
All right, not as bad as some of the Trump surrogates and Mike Pence, but still, you know, he jumped around quite a bit in his defense of Clinton.